Today, in the media conference with Lal Goel, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Bharat Post News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to enlighten you with the current topic. And today's topic is not only current, but very, very important. And the topic is a student a customer? And before I will go to on this topic, I would like to inform you that Saturday we have a special program, which is also been the main is associate of this program is Indo-Gulf Management Association. So today's topic is student a customer? शिष्य कभी संपत्ति था, गुरु का सजग विहान, स्टूडेंट अब कस्टमर, शिक्षक है नादान. This special two-liners were sent to me by Mr. Paramatmanand Pandey. He is a journalist and a farmer, and he is the founder, president of Utho Jago Foundation, which is based in Delhi and Nagpur. A student is primarily a person enrolled in a school or other educational institution and who is under learning with goals of acquiring knowledge, developing professions, and achieving employment at desired field. In the broader sense, a student is anyone who applies themselves to the intensive intellectual engagement with some matter necessary to master it as part of some practical affair in which such mastery is basic or decisive. In the United Kingdom and most Commonwealth countries, the term student denotes those enrolled in secondary schools and higher, for example, college or university. Those enrolled in primary elementary schools are called pupils. An educational institution is a place where people of different ages gain an education, including preschool, child care, primary, elementary schools, secondary, high schools, and universities. They provide a large variety of learning environments and learning spaces. The Indian education sector is a prominent and burgeoning industry. This sector has witnessed tremendous growth in the past decade with the proliferation of innumerable institutions across the nation. However, the mushrooming of these institutes has resulted in dilution of education quality due to independent management of these institutions. In such a situation, it is often the students who suffer the most, as a student spends resource and time in the educational institutions with the expectation that it will eventually help him or her in shaping their career. Who are the main customers is a key question for any organization. In higher education, the question becomes more difficult because it services different groups: students, employers, society, government, and faculty. The Consumer Protection Act 1986, as amended in August 2019, provides protections to the interest of the consumers and aims at resolving their disputes. One of the main questions of law that is always raised at the time of deciding a consumer complaint is whether the complainant falls within the definition of consumer as enumerated under the Consumer Protection Act 1986. Who is a consumer? The term consumer has been defined in Section 2, subsection 1, subsection D of the Consumer Protection Act 1986 as any person who buys any goods for consideration or hires or avails any services for consideration. Whether a student can be considered as a consumer or customer. A student is one who avails educational services in exchange of a particular amount of fee paid by him or her to such service provider. In such circumstances, the education so provided can be considered as services under the Consumers Protection Act 1986, as the student pays a certain consideration towards those services. Therefore, if a student is aggrieved by the services of an educational institution, the student's approach to the consumer forum and the forum deciding the matter thereafter can determine his status as a consumer. In the matter of Vishal Gaonkar versus Engineers Learning Institute 2016, the North Goa Consumer Dispute Redressal Forum had held that when an institute receives the required fee from the student but does not conduct the examination, such act amounts to deficiency of services. The student has every right to get a refund of the amount paid by him to the institute. Based on this consideration, the forum ordered the institute to refund the amount so paid by the complainants along with some damages for harassment faced by the individual. In another case of Anand Institute of International Studies versus Sani Jagi and others, 2019, the NCDRC upheld the decision of the District Forum and State Commission and ruled in favor of the students who were aggrieved by an institution due to lack of basic educational facilities and false advertisement misguiding them to undertake admission in such institution. It was further found that the institution also lacked required affiliations and was continuing operations without getting the same. The District Forum considered the contentions raised by the students and held that inadequate facilities amounts to deficiency in services and false advertisement further promotes unfair trade practice. Further, in a recent matter of FitG Limited versus Vikram Seth 2019, the Honorable Chandigarh State Commission upheld the decision of the District Forum and granted compensation to the aggrieved student towards refund of fees for not availing services of the institute. The forum held that when a student does not avail the service of an institute, it is bound to refund the fees received by it. Not doing the same amounts to unfair trade practice and deficiency in services. In light of the above facts and circumstances of the cases, it is observed that the judicial authorities have recognized the rights of the student as a consumer or customer and the entitlement of compensation to them in the event of deficient services or unfair trade practices. Students should be treated like customers. Students do pay tuition, which tends to be hefty at many institutions to get their education. However, there is a big difference between those who pay shops to get goods and those who pay universities to get their degrees. Shoppers buy their goods, but students earn their degrees. Yes, students should consider themselves to be the consumers of products and services provided by colleges and universities. Institutions should treat students as customers and lower their tuitions to meet students' demands. Tuition keeps going up each and every academic year, and the cost earning of a university degree is getting beyond reach for many potential students. No, students are not customers when they are in classroom. Consumerism stops at classroom door. When an online course, consumerism stops when students log into electronic classroom. When they enter classroom, expectation from them to earn, not buy their grades. So it's a very, very complex situation. One side, the court also upheld, and that they always says that a student is a customer or a consumer. So it comes under that category. But really, are the students are customer? Are we treating them? Are universities also treating them as a customer, or the student is going to a university with the intention to buy a degree or to earn a degree? So there is a very thin line in difference. The only thing is, yes, if the services provided by the universities or colleges are lacking, then definitely students is a customer, and he comes under the Consumer Protection Act 1986 in India. But if he sees himself to earn a degree, then he is not a customer, then he's a student. He's going there to earn. Earlier in ancient time, there used to be no fees for the students. There used to be a guru dakshina, which the student used to give as per his or her choice or wishes after the completion of the studies. And seeing after that, if he or she has earned that thing, then they give whatsoever they want to their guru. At the time of Gurukul, the way that it was run and under the Gurukul system. But today, all the universities and institutes upfrontly take the money, and they charge very heavy, everybody knows. So definitely the students, if there is a deficiency of service, comes under the as a customer. So it's a very, very controversial thinking. Let's see what our very, very learned, experienced, and those who are authority in this field panelists with us. And I would like to invite my first panelist guest, and she is Miss Koshki Sondi. Miss Koshki Sondi is on board of advisor, Bharat University and Educational Ambassador of India. She is also board of advisor on Sri Venkateshwara College, National Council of News and Broadcasting. She is Education Ambassador, International Internship University, as well as Eduxia Research Center. She is Director Media, Oxford EduServe India. She is National President, Women Empowerment, All India Council for Human Rights, Liberties and Social Justice. She is WICCI Cyber Head, Sikkim. Welcome, Ms. Koshki Sondi, to our show. Ms. Koshki, you have heard what I read, the report, that there are two ways to see whether a student is a customer or not. Now, we would like to know from you, your views. Is a student a customer? Ms. Koshki Sondi, please.
Thank you so much, Lal sir, for the invitation, and it's been an honor to be a part of this web series. And thank you for the invitation, Mohan Agrawalji, and all the panelists today. So today our topic is very much debatable when we think about is customer, a student a customer or not. Because as a teacher, first of all, I count myself as a teacher. Then, I joined the administration and being the board of advisory for the several organizations. So all these years, I've seen that my view for the student was very clear that they are my learners. They are coming to me to learn something. And I've been very clear that, okay, and we are serving them as a guru. So when it comes to a customer thing, that is very narrow approach, I believe, and we can't see them as a customer, because customer can be right sometimes, they can be wrong sometimes, they can be complainable to us sometimes. But as the student is a learner, so we can't judge him as a customer. But yes, you are very much right when you have read the reports and the several things around the table right now, that things have been in the previous and in the futuristic, the unshaped future we are facing right now due to COVID. So we are seeing that some institutions and organizations have been taking place where they are being, in the merging or the association of serving things with monetary benefits. Yes, it's happening. But I believe I have encountered more of the organizations where this educational and the students are being framed as being, the free prospect for the growth of the society. So both ways it goes. Like some people are working on that thing and some people are working on that unshaped thing. So I don't believe that the student is a customer, and today I will be presenting my view on the same. So as students are forced This is something which I have, around the Googled and searched and thought, and I have encountered and judged myself that yes, I am right to think that, and then I have come to that outcome, and so that is something. As students are forced to bear more cost for their education due to continuous cuts and rising, it is easy to understand how they adopt a transactional, customer service based attitude towards their education. We have a perfectly good idea of what being a student is. There is a hierarchical relationship between someone who seeks knowledge and others who teach knowledge. It requires some degree of humility and forbearance on both sides. Students have to admit that they don't yet know. Teachers have to admit that those who do not yet know but would like to are in worthy position that deserves it all. The constant is that the mission of university should be pathway or graduates should emerge with skills but also ideas and values. The best will be creative in a way that computers cannot match. And with luck, they will return to upskill and also share their own knowledge in our classroom. Students are not customers. Some authors define them as external customers, primary part. This I have, on the reports I have seen that yes, they are being associated as the customer because we are taking some guru dikshana from them. Yes, but that's something which is acceptable during this long period we have been seeing because without guru dikshana the knowledge is not attained or taken by the student also. That is the process of which we are seeing. So yes, they are as an external customer, but I don't think so. But uh, some institutions have been framed nowadays the concept of taking admission as target association. So that's different approach. We are here talking about real basis and true relationship between education and student along with the instructors. Guru Dakshina should be there, but not associated in a way of not reachable to all the students. The education should be reachable to everyone. It should be reachable to make students, not customers, as good or bad. Giving them space to let those things, explore books and knowledge, and then on notion of that, place other fundamentals. Thinking of a student as customer makes me very uncomfortable. When we think of student as customer, I believe it changes the relationship we have with students. It alters how we see them, how we interact with them, and it alters how they see them. When students begin to see themselves as customer of education, then they should soon build their expectations of what their education should be using the image of customer transaction. If students see themselves as customers, it shifts the burden of responsibility from learning away from the students and onto the teachers, making them passive, not active. Students as customers in higher education, that is a debatable thing which is happening, needs to end. Even though marketing in higher education is well established, there is a continued uh, debate about who the customer is, with many still not taking the students should be viewed as customer in higher education. The paper examines the debate using the framework of market orientation, customer orientation, and service and relationship marketing. The paper includes recommendations about ways to resolve the dispute and concludes that students must be considered customer in the development of marketing strategy. The idea of being a customer shifts the responsibility of learning on the lectures, leaving students with a passive role. Yet we know students need to take active ownership of their own journey. In one sense, it is to be obvious that students are customers, for if no students come to university, there would be no need for faculty members. And if the faculty members are not here, is there any need of educational institutions? Is there any contradictory view about this? What happens when students become a customer? A student approaches the university administrator and starts with discussion queries. Students should be like, I want to learn. May I know the cost of learning from the university? And the university would be like, do you mean the institution? So that is something not comfortable according to me. One has to choose between the honest arrogance and the humility which is happening when you're doing. See, the customers are always right. we have seen that when we are doing some business or as an entrepreneur, I have served some entrepreneurship associations also. So they are seeing that customer to the organization, they are always right. So we can't say in all cases the students are done. They approach to explore new dimensions. They will make mistakes, and we are here to guide. Hence, being customer would not be right associated with the noble profession that teach. Core values of students as partners are grounded in principles that highlight how students and staff can work together as co-researchers, co-teachers, and co-creators. I'm teaching right now the S model, which work on the speech, the skills, and the life skills we are facing. So I don't consider when I'm doing that on a monthly basis. All my services are free. So I can't see a student as a customer. To me, student is a student who is learning. So for me, the debate and with the conclusion that no, student is not a customer. He is a learner. And as a teacher, as an organizer, as an institute, as a university, it's our duty to serve them with the approachable mode of learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Koshke Sondhi, for giving her views. And she strongly says that the student is not a customer. And she says, whatsoever the customer, because as per the marketing thing, customer is always right. But here the student is not right. It is depends on the education which he is getting. And she make all her points very, very clearly. But my question to you, Ms. Sondhi, is why not? Why is not a customer? Because earlier when the Gurukul system was there, he or she used to pay after the completion of the education as per their own choice, and that was like a donation. It's a Guru Dakshina, it's not a fees. But today, the colleges and universities are charging upfront fees for providing lots and lots of services, except the apart from the tuition fees. Tuition fees can be termed, okay, it is for the as a that he or she is not a customer. But what about the development fees? What about so many other heads which they are charging? He comes under the definition of customer. So when he is a customer, yes, if the teachers are teaching and if they are charging their tuition fees, he or she cannot be termed as a customer. But what we are seeing today, the tuition fees is not much. That is a peanut in front of capitation fees, the development charges, so many other charges which the colleges are charging abnormally high fees. So why not? If there is a deficiency in a particular thing, suppose he's been charged for a hostel and the hostel, the food is not up to the mark, or they have not been provided the food, or the hostel room is having deficiency. What is the recourse for the student? Nothing. He has to go to the consumer court, and there he will be termed as a consumer. I have already cited 3 of the judgments. I can cite 1,000 more judgments whichsoever are available. But the thing is, today universities and colleges are not providing the services. They are not imparting the knowledge. They have become a commercial organization rather than becoming a imparting knowledge. So what you say about that, Ms. Sondhi, in keeping in this thing in
Right.
mind?
Exactly. Yeah, you are at some points. I think that is happening. I agree with you, sir. But the thing is, but on the same scale, I have encountered many organizations who are working free also. Like I have been associated with 12 organizations right now who are working in the organization free, and they are approaching the society to the the customers, what we are calling the customer, the students, in a very right way, and they are making them learn how much they are able to pay to the organization. So I've seen both the sides, the university side where there are being not open about giving them the opportunities, and yes, on the other side also. So my point is right now even it is dicey somewhere where I cannot judge a student as customer because they see as customer. So things become very much in a we see things in a taking benefit from the other person. So that is not a right way. As a teacher, as an organization, we
Yeah,
should give them opportunity.
yeah, Miss Sondhi, you have mentioned about the free. As a free, if any services are provided, whether it's a health, education, or any other services, then the customer or the consumer is not comes under the definition of Consumer Act 1986. That is very, very clear. It is written there that if it is a free of charge. Now you are saying that if he is paying, you are earning, fine. But if he is not, after all, there is a limit of charges. You are charging abnormally high nowadays. And one more thing, tomorrow tell me, if a student is not making the payment of a particular month, what you will do? You will do the same thing which a hotel does. If a hotel, somebody is not paying the amount, they will say, okay, goodbye, your luggage is outside. Similarly, you will say, the university or the college say, please go out, we will not take you. So what is the difference? Is it a student or a tourist who is staying in a hotel?
But
Miss
so
Sondi,
I
please.
think there should be some concessional area of concern to organizations where, and we are seeing that there are many open universities right now. They are offering the organizations are offering the course free of cost or very concessional amount, and they are saying, okay, if you are capable to pay, you pay. If you are not capable to pay the amount in the installments for whenever you are able to that. Even we are seeing the organizations and the universities. I work with a university where they have that educational loan criteria. So they are working on that thing. But the thing is, even they need to, they can't provide all these services free to everyone. Where they
Miss
need it,
Miss
they can provide them. Yes.
Yes, but Miss Sondi, there are lots of instances have come in light when a student has paid the fees today, deposited, and next day, suppose he gets an admission in a higher education institutions like IIM or IIT. If he approaches to the same college, they say, sorry, we will not refund your fee, or if they will refund, they will refund a very meager amount. So it is like the same thing that you have made a payment to a hotel room and you say, no, now 24 hours is over. You have 48 hours before you should have informed. So now money is forfeited. So my point is, one side you are saying it's a imparting the knowledge. Once you are talking of imparting knowledge, then why these types of things are there? Anyway, thank you very much. I know that you have to go. So thank you very much, Ms.
Yeah,
Sondi.
excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
Sir.
no, Dr. Agarwal, I will be coming to you. I know
No,
that.
I know. I just wanted to make one correction.
Yeah.
Just one correction, where you said about Consumer Protection Act that if a service is being given free of charge, the person is not a consumer. I beg to differ. The law is very clear that even when the services are given free of cost, still the user is a consumer under the Consumer Protection Act.
Okay, I will reply to you after I will verify.
Also, because yes, that is my point. Like for me, services, if they are not payable also, they count as a service.
Anyway, we will discuss this because it's a legal point. Let me check and I will come back to you. Thank you very much, Miss Sondi, because you have to go. That's why the only problem today we faced is of your audio also. Audio was not clear. And that's why we always request our panelists to join on time. If you would have joined on time, we would have corrected your audio. Audio was not at all clear. I'm sure when you will listen your recording, you will also feel that whatsoever you have spoken, it is not clear. But anyway, that is the problem with the live telecast. If it were be, thank you very much, Ms. Sondi. Now I would like to invite my next panelist guest, and she is Dr. Anuja Pandey. Dr. Anuja Pandey is the Professor Marketing and Program Director at All India Management Association, AIMA, New Delhi. She is the faculty trainer, consultant, and researcher. She is head of AIMA, India Case Research Center, ICRC. Her primary field of research and publication are marketing strategies, social media, branding, product development, positioning, consumer behavior, etc. Welcome, Dr. Anuja Pandey, on our show. Dr. Anuja Pandey, you have heard what Ms. Sondi has mentioned. Although I could not hear properly what she mentioned, but because she was in hurry and she has to go and she joined so late, so I could not correct her, and I know that it is not correct from my part. I should have not allowed her, but otherwise she would have felt bad. So that's why I allowed. But my point to you again the same. Is a student a customer? Dr. Anuja Pandey, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all the panelists for inviting me in this show. Thank you, Dr. Agarwal and Dr. Goel. Myself, as sir has talked about my profile, I would be restricting my discussion onto the higher education forte. That's where I belong to. I would like to really take up the discussion from a little different perspective, which is a perspective where we are talking about the growth of or the mushrooming of the private institutions. So when you look into it, primarily, as I said, I will be focusing only on to my discussion to the higher education forte. So when you look into the higher education system, you would find that at this point in time, in India, we have got more than 1,000 universities. And to be very precise, of these universities, almost 388 universities are into the state private university category, and 88 are into the deemed to be private university category. Now, if you look into it, we have got more than 42,000 colleges in India. Of these, almost 60% of them are operating as private colleges. Now, when you look into the university, traditional university objective of setting up a university, idea and objective was to really impart higher education and make education reachable to masses. And that is why the whole concept of education was set up. And when you look into the way the state universities were set in, the central universities were set in, this objective was very, very clear that we are imparting quality education. And then the whole model of education was very, very different, which was more to a learner centric model, where we are talking about imparting, creating education, doing research in the universities, and imparting this research and sharing the research with the students, so that there is a concept of learning which is happening with the universities. And now when you look in from that very perspective, this concept of customer was never there. So, but the concept of customer is a student, a customer comes in when we talk about primarily when we look into the way the education sector has emerged post the time when in government of India, and typically in all the international university sector, when private players were allowed to operate into the education sector. And that is where commercialization of education started happening. And when we look into the commercialization of education, then of course, a lot of other things happened which were directly or indirectly related to education and were influencing the way the education would be imparted. And that's where the model of education started shifting. So when I look into the key terms, I would like to really, before I move on to how the today education industry has been looked into, I would like to clarify certain terms. So when I look into the term customer is one who is paying for certain amount of money to get certain some amount of product or services. Another term which is very loosely used is consumer. Consumer is may not be paying for the services directly, but is one who is actually consuming the service. Now, when I look into the perspective, most of the time, typically in Indian scenario, student is primarily a consumer of service, because most of the time his education has been taken care by his parents, or he's been sponsored by some other authorities. Maybe in US, a lot of people pay through their pockets to earn the education. But primarily in India, more or less, student is a consumer of service. Now, when you talk about consumer of a service, then that means he consumes this service, and when he is looking for it, we also need to understand what is the product that he's consuming. The product here is knowledge. We are in universities. What are we doing? We are imparting knowledge. We are creating knowledge. We are imparting knowledge. We are into the business of dispersing knowledge, and that's where the product that we are talking about, I'm talking from the marketing perspective, product is very, very different. It's actually not a product, it is more of a service. Now, when I look into my education is a very, very big service industry. And when we talk about service industry, we all know that, yes, in service industry, customer or a consumer is a co-producer. And that's where the student role comes into the education system. And that's where I want to really point out that, yes, he is not a customer, he's a consumer of service, and he is actually a co-creator of the service. The quality of the service would primarily depend upon how good is a faculty, how good is a teacher, and how good is a student. If you look into the best of the universities of the world, they are best not because they have the best of the faculty, or they have the best of the infrastructure, or they have got best of the resources. No, they are best. Why? Because they have got one of the creamiest students, the best of the students reach out to these universities. And that is where the grooming of these students is being done by some of the chosen or the one of the best faculties, and the output is really great. And that is where we are talking about student being a co-producer into it. And if the student is not really making or is doing his part of job, no university would be a great university. So if you look into all the top ranking universities, these are the places where student actively participates into the process of co-creation of knowledge. And this knowledge is, and as we always say, it's not only the faculty which actually produces knowledge, it is actually co-created into our classrooms. And that is what we need to appreciate. And that is where I have a very, I look into education industry as a very different model, where the system, when you look into the way the universities, private universities have mushroomed, and everybody is talking about the ranking, the branding part of it. What is my world ranking? What is my AICT ranking? Or maybe what is how good is my brand name doing? What is my student feedback? What is the scores student is giving for a faculty? Why are we really running after it? Are we really trying to create another product? This is something where I want to really highlight, because when you talk about creating a product, as I said, student is a co-producer into the whole process. And if he's a co-producer, then we have to really look into from a very different perspective. We can't expect that he is paid up a money, so he is entitled to get some type of services, and that means that he should be, since he paid a very high fee, he might expect that the faculty also grades him nicely, or is open to accept his answers and assignments whenever he finds time. No, this is not what education is all about. Education has a system, and to impart that particular system, the system has been very strongly and rigidly set in, where we expect certain things from a student, where we know that he comes to a classroom, he learns about it, he attempts examination, he attempts assignments in a class, he participates into a discussion, and then he's also open to a lot of criticism which a faculty might draw him. By the idea and objective of this criticism is to help him out to know a particular subject very well. But the way when you look into the private institutions and the growth which has happened typically in India, what we have actually created, we have created all factories of education, where we are running after the school ranking, student feedback, brand names, student satisfaction, what grade student gets in, and when you go, what type of student experiences we are talking about. And that's where a lot of us are going wrong. Why I say we are going wrong? Because we are not in a factory where everybody would get the best quality, the output would always be the best. No, when we are into education, all my students may not be of the similar quality. My objective of education is to teach everyone, make everyone learn, and set in a mindset that he gets into the learning. So a lot of them may not be the best, they might not be the A graders, but as a faculty, my role is very different. I have to really bring all those backbenchers or people with low grades to a level where they start appreciating the knowledge, they start participating into it, and they get a understanding that that's how the learning would happen, and it's a lifelong learning process. And that is where we say we have to be very careful. Even if you are running a private business school, or you're running in a private institution, that's where the pain area comes in, and that's where primarily the court cases that you've talked about, Dr. Goel, these are the places where I want to highlight that probably we have gone all wrong into it. Why? Because we have tried to create a service product which is primarily customer centric. And if you are customer centric, then you are bound to give a lot of services to him, and service satisfaction the way it goes for any other service industry, the hotel industry or the restaurant industry or the tourism industry or the banking sector, it has to go like that. But this cannot happen with education. Education is not an industry. Education is not a factory. Your customer here is a student who's a co-creator of the product, and he has to go through a certain process. And we also need to look into what are my core things. My core thing is education. That's where my core thing is research. That's where my institution has been built in. All the things that we are talking about, whether how good was the institute building, how good was the cafeteria, how good was the hostel, these are all supplementary services. They are just to facilitate this imparting of knowledge to happen. For them, a student can be a customer, but not for the education which happens in a classroom. For education which happens to a classroom, he has to be a co-creator, he has to be a co-producer, and he has to be a consumer of that particular knowledge. And then only the model would work. And if we are looking at the way the private sector has emerged in India, most of the private sector is having a very fixed model, which is more of a ROI driven model, where you invest certain things, and you invest into the infrastructure. You have a huge building, you have a beautiful cafeteria, you have all the lively things which a youngster is looking for, and you create a big mall kind of experience for a student, and he goes it, and he believes that the faculty would be at his service, and and since his parents have paid heavily for it, and he should be earning a degree, and this degree should not be any B grade degree, it should be only A grades that he should be defining, and that's what he is expecting out of it. That's where we actually go very tremendously wrong into it. Even if we are a private institution, please do not look into these investments as ROI. ROI in education is something which I don't really believe. ROI in education is what my student gain out of it. Where did they excel? In what positions did they really reach? This is where my worth of education comes in. It is not from the type of money that I'm going to generate out of it. Money is always an outcome of the delivery of good quality education that I'm doing. And probably that's when you look into the world best universities, they have not diluted their standards. And that is what I wanted to emphasize, that please treat your student as a learner, as a consumer into your classroom. Please do not treat him as a customer. I hope, sir, I have answered the few minutes that you have given to me. Now I'm open to any other question that you would like me to address.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Pandey. And Dr. Pandey says that a student is not a customer because he is a co-producer. He is a co-consumer rather, and they both are getting the student is getting the knowledge which is imparted by the faculties. So he cannot be termed as a customer. And those private institutions who are charging because they have they have invested the money. So that is why the student cannot be termed as a customer. I think that is what you mean, Dr. Pandey, correct?
Yes, sir. He can be a customer for the hostel services, for the mess services, or maybe the cafeteria services, but in a classroom he is not a customer.
But my question remains the same. The student is not coming to in an institution to study to Dr. Anuja Pandey or Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal. They are coming for the institution of whole, and once they are coming to the institution whole, they will are looking at everything. Now I can give an example, counter example, although I have to change the format because of Miss Sons. Otherwise, I used to ask the question last, but you have asked. In a hospital, when we talk about a hospital, if a patient goes there, here so you are just imparting a knowledge, a person will become a knowledgeable person. There is a question of life and death, whether the hospital comes under this act or not. Whether you will treat the patient as a customer or not. There are Supreme Court judgments where, yes, the negligence, if a misjudgment by a doctor, it will not come as a medical negligence now. Earlier it was. But for the deficiency of services in the hospital can be sued. So my point is, where there is a question of life and death, and when there is a question of knowledge. So there is a difference. Anyway, I will come back to you in the next round, because you are there. You are not. Otherwise, Dr. Mohanlal Agarwal will again come on me, and he will like. Although I have a ready reply for you, Dr. Mohanlal Agarwal, and you just go through it. It is very clearly mentioned against the payment. If it is not exceptional, if you have not made the payment, if a student is free of charge in any of the institutions, because it is a compensatory nature. The Consumer Act says that if there is a deficiency of a service, it has to be a compensation. Compensation if you have not charged anything. If you have not, so you are providing free of charge. That's why all the government hospitals, you cannot sue them for the deficiency of their services, but you can sue a private hospital because they are charging money, and the government hospitals, although they are charging 5 or 10 or 15 rupees, but that government feels now that is a negligible amount, so they doesn't comes under the consumer. We will discuss this. I'm going to keep a topic only on this now next time about that free and paid, who is under the Consumer Act. Thank you very much, Dr. Anuja Pandey. I will come back to you with some question to you. Now my question goes to not question. I would like to invite my next panelist guest, and he is Mr. Mohammad Jahir. Mr. Mohammad Jahir is the Director of Operations, University of West London, Ras Al Khaimah, UAE. Mr. Jahir, you have heard the two views of Ms. Sondhi as well as Dr. Pandey, and both have given one thing very clearly. They consider that the student is not a customer. Although their approach was different, they have given it in a different way, but the ultimately crux, they say the student is not at all a customer. If student is not customer, we will take it like this, then why all foreign universities are looking for Indian students for money? They have opened the United States, which is totally closed for India, and they are allowing from the D-Day 1, all students can go. And Indian government has also allowed. Otherwise, the difference here is between the first dose and the second dose vaccination is 84 days in Covishield, while for students, if he has a letter of enrollment in any of the foreign universities, it is only the 4 weeks. So it means if he is not a customer, then why universities, foreign universities are looking for the Indians? They are not looking for imparting knowledge. What Dr. Anuja Pandey says, no one is having. Are they giving free education? No, they want money. That is the reason. Now what you want to say about this, that it is a student is a customer. Mr. Mohammad Jahir, please.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I share the view similar to Dr. Anuja Pandey, so I'll keep myself very brief. So the arguments are very similar to Dr. Anuja Pandey. So my argument, obviously, it has always been that I've often wondered, why isn't the education like watching a web series? Why isn't that learning process similar to watching a web series in a Netflix or something like that? Why isn't our lecture very interesting that we wait for the next lecture to come like we wait for the web series? Don't we think a similar level of engagement is going to make it easy to impart knowledge onto the students? Or is the learning like watching TV with little effort of maneuvering the remote? Or is education about lecture teaching? Or is student just a customer or a recipient of knowledge? Isn't it education more than that? So, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, speakers, Chair Lal Goel, Professor Agarwal, Dr. Anuja Pandey, I'm Mohammad Zahir. As I said, I'm going to take a different view. And I'm going to take a little bit different view. I'm going to break it down, the whole education. As I said, the first part is the teaching part itself, where the teacher imparts knowledge. So that becomes the core services in the education setting. Unlike the other product and services in education, this teaching is not a transaction where the customer buys and the product and uses it with little effort, like I gave you an example of Netflix. So at the same time, it is also, the students also deserves a good lecture since they have paid, because most of the lectures, most of the institutions across the world have become a charging institute. I would not like to call it a commercial institute, but they pay for the services. The students do pay for the services. So when you look at different parts of the world, since Doctor has already brought out the international education setting, a lot of the institutes across the world has makes several strides into the pedagogy of education. How they have been taught, they've been taught in a very interesting way or active methodology. Whereas there are some institutions in some countries do fall back significantly behind. They still use the 500 old method of rote learning, where the lectures imparts knowledge onto the student and the student continues to be a listener, where the passive knowledge has been transformed, but student literally really not gain anything out of it. But this is the easiest practice, whereas in the active learning is a lot difficult practice. Which means, don't you think the students deserves a better teaching method since they are paying for it? But for the argument's sake, let's believe that all of the institutions across the world have active learning strategies whereby the students are very active and they're engaging the learning. But does that mean that the students are customers? Because if it's a customer, then the students, doesn't it that the students should be eligible for a better grade because they are paying for it? Isn't it that the students should get pass mark since they're paying for it? Can the teaching be considered as a student or a customer? Because if in the ideal way of world, when something is being paid, then the services has to be delivered. So which means in if you take in this setting, then the consumer's demand must be met. What is the consumer's demand? Most of the parents would love to have, or the students would love to have, A grade or A plus grade. Do you think that the education or the lectures can provide that? I don't think we would be able to do that. So the teaching, the process of the core is that, yes, it cannot be taken, the teaching cannot be taken as a part of the buyer-seller relationship. The student cannot be considered as a student. However, increasingly, it is about the student's learning experience or the student experience in the whole university. So it is not just about teaching. There's several other aspects that makes a student a ideal student or a career prospective student. There's several other supplementary ancillary services that the university has to provide. We can't just have the teaching. I don't think that is the ideal way, where we just stick to the teaching and that's our core services to the student. If it's become a very competitive world, neck to neck competition in the corporate or starting up a new company, so which means there's other services needs to be provided. So, but I just want to touch a bit back on the student, what sort of rights that the students have. Professor Dr. Anuja Pandey was telling me about the student feedback. If students has seen as a customer, unfortunately, I don't think the lecturer will be able to provide justice. Because if the lectures are gauged on the basis of the feedback they receive, then unfortunately they have to compromise on certain things. Because I remember on a personal experience, whereby my lecture was tough on me. I absolutely didn't like that lecture. And I rated very badly in the student feedback. But only after years that I realized that particular lecture was something that help me to build my career prospectus. But at the time, so can we, because if we consider student as a customer, we give the opportunity to rate feedbacks. Yes, feedbacks are very important, but but um, that will also mean the lectures may not be able to provide good services. They might have to compromise on certain things and then focus on the student feedback. But on an institutional point of view, unfortunately, the institutions or the policymakers cannot come into the classes and understand what is happening. So student feedback does make a lot of difference. And I've increasingly seen in a lot of the institutions across the world that there are interventional measures taken on the basis of the student feedback. There has been instances where necessary changes or important changes are made on the basis of the student feedback. So yes, the certain ways, yes, when you see that the interventions are made, which means the student's feedback is heard, student is considered as a student, so as a customer. So coming back to the core services, obviously, as I'm saying that in the core services, definitely no, the students cannot be considered as a student, as a customer. Isn't it, as I said, isn't it time that we clearly define what is expected from the university education? In the process of choosing the college or university, what is the final output the student would like to seek? Don't we seek a good opportunity, or the students seek a good opportunity on their career after they finish their studies? Isn't it the right of the student to have a better career once they have spent their time and money in that institution? Isn't that the institution has to facilitate that services along with the knowledge enhancement? Is it just about the knowledge enhancement? Isn't it about the whole experience? Why is that we do seek a refund? Probably, let's suppose if you buy a refrigerator or a smartphone or whatever it is, but doesn't deliver the services that is promised, we immediately seek for a refund. Why isn't the student can't seek for a refund? Did the university or the institution not promise something? Did the university not promise a career prospect? If the university hasn't delivered? But unfortunately, as I've stated earlier, in the system of education, it is a co-creator, as Dr. Anuja Pandya said. If it was a Netflix series, you would just sit and watch, but unfortunately, as a student, you can't just sit and watch. Your active participation is very important. If you want to make the best use of the resources that the institution provide, then you have to be an active participation. But obviously, I also argue that the minimum standards of resources must be provided to the student. The minimum standards of resources are predefined by our regulatory bodies, including the qualification of the lectures, the library resources, infrastructure resources, even before, I believe, in a lot of the countries, even before the institution gets the permissions to offer education. I strongly believe it's a very strongly regulated industry. This means the students will be getting an adequate services in a minimum basic standard of services. But end of the day, it is the student who has to make the best use of the resources and the services that is provided. It is often mentioned in the study guide, module study guide, a lot of countries uses a lot of different terminologies. The learning hours is about 30%. The teaching hours is about the 30% of that particular module, and then, or a course, and then 70% is self-learning. I believe the argument is there. The 30% is from the institution, the 30% is from the institution, and the 70% is from the student. If they don't both work together, if the student don't make best use of the services that provided, the 70% effort is not being put, I don't think the student would be able to make the best use of the service. So can we really call a student a customer? No. In other product and services, little effort is required, but unfortunately here a lot of effort is required from the recipient. Calling a student a customer It is a constructive way of thinking about the relation between students and the college educations. Students are to embrace the tautology students. That's to say, the relation between a college and a student is sui generis. It needs to be understood in its own term, not twisted to fit the needs of a metaphor. It needs to be modeled on the relation between merchants and customers or any other metaphoric arrangement. As I said, in the core services area, some educationists call it students as clients instead of customers. But in my opinion, the student and institution relationship, students cannot be called neither a client, nor a consumer, nor a customer. As previously mentioned, the student's journey doesn't stop only in the core services that is teaching. Student deserves to have a good and transparent process during the time of admission. Anything that we deliver or the institution deliver should be clearly mentioned what is expected during the 3 years of it. It's a big life-making decision. There's two elements involved. One is the time. Other one is the money. Yeah, money may not be as important as the time, but we are giving that it should, the process of everything that student is expected should be in a very transparent. So I think, as with any other product or services covered by the consumer protection law, student should also get the rights, all the rights within the consumer protection law. So for an example, if the student do change the mind within 14 days, I think student should deserve a full refund, because students, as any other customer, has not enrolled yet. The process of teaching hasn't started yet. So which means, as a consumer, they should get a full refund if they do change their mind, if they do go into the other institution, like Dr. Lal has earlier mentioned. So, but what is more important, I believe, is the transparency of the information that is provided to the student. So the student will be able to make a very conscious decision whether to join the institution or not to join the institution. So I'm going to wrap it up. So what I believe is that all the information about what the services they're going to sign up, what is expected during the course of study, all available statistics on the past should be in the public domain. Of course, not the personal details, but the statistics of employment, student pass rate, student dropout rate, student satisfaction rates, list of lectures available, students' fees payment process, expected ancillary services, and the support after studies, career services must be. I'm okay with the time, or?
Yeah, no, I think you have to wrap up, because Dr. Agrawal is waiting now.
Right, thank you. So I'm just going to wrap it up now. I also believe that the student has been admitted into the students after meeting the entry criteria. The engagement of the student should be ensured by the institution itself, and no student should be left out. If the institution has made a decision to take the student in after going through the entry processes, and then there should be no reason that any student should be left out. So which means, so the students do deserve a good quality of services, ancillary services, which must come under the consumer protection law or as a customer, but the core teaching should not be considered as as a part of a student a buyer-seller relationship, or student should not be considered as a customer. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad Zahir, for giving your views. And he is very clear that the customer related, or the student cannot be termed as a customer as far as the teaching is concerned. But he has made two riders rather. First is, if there is ancillary services, yes, he is a customer. And he made a very important point that if the student changes the mind within 14 days, he or she should get the full refund, which is not the case in India, at least, which I know so many institutions, they even after 1 hour, they are not ready to refund any amount. Forget about the full 100% amount. Thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad Zahid. Paucity of time, I would like to go to now our senior panelist, Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal. Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal is the former Professor of Marketing, Innovation and Management, IIM Lucknow, XLRI Jamshedpur, and California State University, USA. He is a president of Indo-Gulf Management Association. Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, you have heard everyone. First thing I will just tell you, you just go through it. The Consumer Protection Act very clearly says that there are exceptions, and if there is a services provided free of charge, this does not come under the Consumer Protection Act. Now, coming to this point, all have made their points, and they are saying the customer is not a customer. But if we are talking of India, and you know the conditions, how the universities are working, we have the maximum universities in the world, about 1,000 universities, and only 3 universities came under the last, the 2 days back, the list has been out of under the 400 best universities in the world, only 3. We are proud or not, that up to you. So the question is, if the knowledge is imparting very ethically, with full knowledge, as Dr. Anuja Pandey says, so why our universities are lacking? That I will ask the question to you afterwards. But now I would like to know your views. That is a student a customer? Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, please.
Thank you very much, Goel. Today you have upped the activities as well as activism in this particular panel, and I guess that is all because of the panelists who are there and your brilliant opening and your brilliant repartees that you have asked. You're an excellent lawyer, and that's why you mentioned that part. But I don't want to dwell too much on that issue, whether the free customer, whether that customer is in the free hospital or whether that customer is in the free primary education. National Consumer Complaint Redressal Commission has held as recently as in 2019 that a customer who has not paid anything, even in a government hospital, that particular person can also file a complaint against that particular hospital under the Indian Consumer Act, which is amended, as you know, in 2019. But I don't want to deal more on that particular issue. And why I'm so much interested in these things, because I have trained almost all consumer protection agencies in India on this issue itself, that what are the rights of the consumers under Consumer Protection Act, including, you may remember, a very, very well-known person of consumer protection in this country, Professor Shah, who was from Ahmedabad. He also attended some of my training programs on that, on consumer protection. So that's not the issue. The issue at this particular moment is that is a student a customer? And we have to see beyond the legal point of view only, which is very interesting and very important also, because that is the operational aspect of the relationship. But there is something deeper than that, and that is professional relationship, a religious relationship, a religion of education. Here I mean the religious relationship, moral relationship, and also the way it happens, especially in the higher education. And Dr. Anuja was absolutely correct in putting the context very clear that we are talking about higher education, where she mentioned, the term co-producing consumer, which is a very, very generic term in service industries. That in service industries, we always consider service buyer to be service consumer as well as co-producer. So that part is there. In fact, we even use another term, which we call prosumer, the person who is producing as well as consuming at the same time. So that becomes prosumer from that point of view. So she's absolutely right that in the case of higher education. But again, I remind the viewers that co-production is not essential. It is desirable, because there have been many, many students in higher education where they do not even open their mouth except just doing whatever professor has asked in terms of assignments and all that. But in terms of contributing to the thought process, they hardly do anything. So from that point of view, their co-production is almost next to zero, or perhaps just little above than 0. The second point, which I think a professor, not now professor, but one day I hope, one day he also becomes a professor, which is my colleague and my friend, Mr. Mohammad Zaid, where he distinguished the role of student in various aspects of higher education. The first one was the core and the second one was the supplementary. And he believes, and again rightly so, that in supplementary education or the supplementary aspects of education, customer rights are fully applicable to students also, and that should be the case everywhere. While in the case of a core service, which is happening either in the class or off class, or in simple words, the direct relationship between the consumer, which is the at this particular moment the student, and the provider, which is in our case is the teacher, the role and responsibilities as we understand of customer do not apply in that particular course. And again, he's absolutely right. I have to mention this particular thing in a particular context. About 35 years ago at FMS, Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi University, I was a very, very young, at that time, younger person to talk about this thing in terms of student feedback. And my guru at that time, who was also Dean of FMS at that time, he was saying that student feedback should not be the way we treat customer feedback in commercial organizations. So what is the point? The point probably are two. Number one, we are not saying student as a customer. We are saying student as a person who deserves customer centricity. Customer centricity means that the way we treat our customers in terms of respect, in terms of love and affection, in terms of care, in terms of the wellness, in terms of the welfare, the same thing should be applied in the case of teacher and teaching or student relationship also. In other words, even though we are producing a product, but we do have a responsibility towards that person for his or her care, for his or her wellness, for his or her improvement, for his or her becoming a value-added product for the benefit of the society. So if we refuse to do that value addition in the name of customer centricity or in the name of customer, then we are becoming almost disservers to the societies, not server. So this is the point which I would like to make. The second thing I would like to say here is that this student satisfaction, and that was the thing I had mentioned at that time also, that students' feedback on the teachers should be at best taken as internal audit of your standards or internal audit of your implementation. In other words, that are we in compliance with the things that we are saying we do, or are we doing the way we should be doing the quality? So student satisfaction survey is extremely important for internal consumption, for internal audit, for internal understanding. But when it becomes the basis of hiring and firing a particular professor, a particular faculty, then which means you have lost the context. You have lost, even I would go to the extent that you have lost the plot itself, that you have not understood the basic fundamental of a particular student feedback. The student feedback is for internal compliance judgment, for internal quality satisfaction. Yes, if this particular internal quality satisfaction is not followed by internal quality improvement or professional development of that particular faculty, then it is not the professor who is at fault, but it is also the fault of the organization that it is not improving a department. It is not improving an actor who is in the delivery of the quality of your organization. So therefore, if any organization is deficient in faculty development programs, in faculty development or improvement programs, then that's the fault of the university or the college. Yes, if the faculty doesn't attend, if the faculty doesn't contribute, if the faculty takes it lightly, obviously that faculty is not meant to be a faculty, because on one hand, you're not receiving good feedback. On the other hand, you're also not making efforts to improve yourself. And therefore, in both the cases, the faculty is at fault, and that faculty becomes the right candidate to be fired or right candidate to be let go, because this is not the way we want our institutions to go. So this is the point I would like to make, that internal compliance, internal customer satisfaction reports will become the basis. Now, when these things are not done, they become then the reason for external review, for external satisfaction. And then all these things which you very correctly mentioned about Consumer Protection Act and many other things will arise. The second thing which happened very recently, and I think, both Mr. Zahir and I were a part of that, so he will immediately relate to what this came recently in one of the faculty development
I think
programs.
some phone is ringing.
Sunita, can you take it later,
Yeah.
please? Don't mind.
Yeah.
So, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
So, in this particular case, the person who came to, talk to us was from a commercial organization, and he was unable to distinguish between a student and a normal customer, the way we understand in a commercial organization. And he was not even willing to understand that this is a prosumer we are talking about. This is the co-producer that we are talking about, rather than the consumer that he understood in the organizations where he has been working. His thoughts are clear. His intention is noble, but his approach was giving a very, very wrong impression, where we had to do each and everything in compliance with the wishes and expectations of the customers from that point. Yes, as I said, intention and approach is where we are talking about auxiliary services, point taken. As far as the core service is concerned, point fully lost, because you have not understood the difference between the two. So this is the thing that I would like to mention here, that student is also a product. And if a product is produced and improved as per the wishes of the product, then I think the producer is doing a very, very wrong thing. That doesn't mean that that particular producer shouldn't have a customer centricity. So customer centricity is required. Treating that particular person as a customer is not required as far as core services are concerned. So I would go a step beyond what both my learned colleagues said, that in core services, student is not a customer. I would say that customer or that person requires or deserves a customer centricity. And what is that customer centricity? Listening to that person, listening to the feedback with respect, listening to even the opposition points that that particular person is making, because the intention is noble, because the intention is not to challenge or to criticize, but to expand the quality and scope of the discussion. Therefore, even the teacher should listen to the students as you listen to your customers in terms of improving the quality. In terms of supporting their learning experience, also it is very important that faculty should choose customer centricity as the way to go. So if the student requires some extra tutoring, if the student requires some extra, then, it is a very bad thing on teachers. At least most teachers I have seen. They say, let me say what I have to say, and questions I will do it at the end. To me, you are not doing a very good teaching. To me, the teaching is, which is interactive teaching, Q&A based teaching, stimulus based teaching, stimulus and response based teaching, rather than I will have my time to say, and then you say whatever you want, and I will answer again as a sage on the stage, and I will not be a coach by your side. I think we need to be coached by their side rather than coach also makes the people work very hard. But coach is always a coach, which is better than the sage on the stage. So that is why I believe customer centricity is required even in the core service which is being provided in the colleges and universities. But that doesn't mean that we have to give them the grades. As very correctly Dr. Anuja said, we are not selling degrees, we are not marketing degrees, but we are creating one of the finest kind of learning experience. This is the only thing I would say, sir, with all humility, that customer is deserving a student is deserving a customer centricity, not necessarily customer status, because our eventual customer is the society to which that particular student is going to serve his or her role. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal. Again, a rebut to your that thing. Supreme Court held that a hospital which provide the medical services free of charge across the board to all patients, that it would stand alone outside the purview of Consumer Protection Act. What you are saying is many hospitals are providing free of charges for few patients, and other they are charging. If you are doing, then you are under the Consumer Protection Act. But if it is across the board, like district hospitals, the civil hospitals of the government, they are providing free, they are not under the service. This is a Supreme Court judgment. I have already sent to you. Please go check your WhatsApp after the program.
Do. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, what Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal has mentioned, I would like to clarify from him. At one stage, you mentioned that the student is a product. Is it correct, Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal?
Yes. Eventually, he is a product. Yeah.
Okay. If a student is a product, then the question of consumer doesn't arise. If a refrigerator is a product, then refrigerator cannot be consumer. So please clarify this, because I am also confused whether a student is a product or is a consumer, because consumer cannot be a product and product cannot be a consumer. Please clarify.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You have asked an excellent question, and I appreciate your ability as well as willingness to help and to get us educated. Very, very important. As far as this refrigerator and student thing is concerned, I'm afraid these two things are not comparable. In the first case, we are talking about lifeless objects. In the second case, we are talking about cognitively active products which have got life as well as contribution. So in both the cases, in our services marketing, we have got a very clear way to serve them as a product. The table as a product, or the refrigerator as a product, and as a patient or as a customer who is the student or someone else. So these two things are not comparable, except the thought that both deserve customer centricity. Why? Because in the case of the fridge, the user is someone else. In the case of the student, it is possible that the student himself is the end user, because that particular person will be creating a company, creating a business, creating something of his own, and therefore he or she is not going to serve in any other company as any other employee. So in both the cases, there is a clear difference.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, because the professors, the problem with the professors to discuss with them is they are always right, and they will convince you in any case. And his student, they cannot have a say, because that is because it's all but one thing is very clear. What you have said is that the product is different than the student. Of course, the student cannot be that type of product, which is it's a lifeless product. Thank you very much. And so now time is short, but still I will try to take one question, a small question. I think I have not asked Mr. Jahir a question. Mr. Jahir, you were talking about, you have mentioned that some services can be, some services cannot be. You have mentioned all those things, and especially when you are imparting the knowledge, it is. But how the student or their relatives, the parents, will come to know whether you are imparting the services impartially, properly, ethically or not? After all, who is going to gauge? It is you only. You are the service provider. You are your own judge. How come it is possible? After all, somebody else has to see if the child is not developed properly, even if in a higher education, and if the blame goes only to the student. Many cases have come where the professor is partial to those who are taking the tuition with him or her, and they are not giving the services to the others. What do you say for that, from Mr. Jahir? 30 seconds only.
Yes, it's a very good question, but I believe that in the higher education, the picture of parents should not come there. The student itself is old enough to make their own decisions. So the student should be able to make a judgment on the basis of what they receive, the services. In terms of the, as I said, the processes should be very clear. As you said, you were asking about how do we ensure that how do we know, or the student knows that the services promised is being delivered. If there is no, there should be a mechanism to probably have a right. The student should have a right to appeal, right to question in a confidential way. There should be regulatory body to place checks and balances in place to make sure that the services are provided to the students as promised.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Although the problem with the student is if he will make a complaint to any regulatory board, his career can be spoiled by the professor. That is the main problem. Thank you very much. So today, viewers, you have seen that a student is not a customer, and we should not consider as a customer. After all, the teachers are trying their best, and tomorrow is a teacher's day, and teachers are trying their best to impart the knowledge. We must have faith in teachers. We must give respect. The problem today is we are considering everyone, we are putting a question everywhere. We act as a devil's advocate for everyone. It's not right. It's not a right approach. We have to have faith. After all, teacher is not an enemy of your child, or teacher is not enemy of any student. He or she wants to impart the knowledge. And it is our duty as a student, as a parents, that we must keep faith. We must listen what they say. We must, as our one of the panelists says, 70% work we have to do, the student has to do that work and try to fulfill. Yes, if there is some deficiency in the services which has nothing to do with the teacher directly, they can make a complaint. There are lots of provisions. They can go to the principal, the dean, the director, or the vice chancellor, whomsoever. But to come to see to it that he is a customer is not correct. Otherwise, tomorrow it will be whosoever will pay, and then the student will start judging each and every teacher, which is not correct and which is really harmful for the society. Thank you very much. And today's program has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se Sambad Sarokar News, Bharat Post News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring to you every day new topic. But today, something is different because today is their Teachers' Day Eve. And in this Teachers' Day Eve, today the program is of TUM and Global TV Best Principal and Teachers Award Program. And yours sincerely is one of the is the chief guest of the program. So anyway, my duty here is to inform you about the evening program. And today at 4:30 p.m., TUM and Global TV Best Principal and Teachers Award Program and Teachers Award Program. And it will be, I am the chief guest. The guest of honors are Advocate Santosh S. Nagale Patil and Nagale Law Associate Bengaluru. Mr. M.V. Paulus, Chairman Global TV, is also guest of honor. And the special guest is Lieutenant Colonel J.A. Roque, retired Vice President and Head Academics Arnam Education and Welfare Trust, Kerala, Palkad, Kerala. Mr. Bhaskar Shukla, ex-Indian Navy officer, founder, the ultimate mentors, that is TUM. Dr. Ruxana Asal, child psychologist, chairperson, GMH and TUM. So please tune in today at 4:30 p.m. to see this program to honor the best principal and teachers across the India. This program will be live telecast. So please tune in today. It is a Teachers' Eve Day, and I think we must give respect to the teachers in whatsoever way we can. Thank you very much, and thank you, Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal. Thank you, Dr. Anuja Pandey. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammad Jahir, and thank you, Ms. Sondhi, for giving their views. And